Well, welcome to Newcastle Borough Council's Cabinet meeting today. First of all, item on the agenda is apologies. I have apologies from Jill Waring, one of our Cabinet members who can't make it today. All the Cabinet members that are joining me, welcome is Trevor Johnson, Portfolio Holder for Environment and Recycling, Jill Heason, Portfolio Holder for Community Safety and Wellbeing, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for almost everything else is Stephen Sweeney. And I'm leader Simon Tagg, and then portfolio holder for strategic planning Paul Northcote is here as well, also joined by officers of the council, so welcome to you, and then also anybody that is watching on the YouTube channel today. Item 2 on our agenda is declarations of interest. Do we have any for members for items on the agenda? No, okay. Minutes of the previous meeting are attached on page 5 to 6. Can we agree those as a correct record? Okay, agreement for those. So first item of business is item 4, which is the review of COVID impact. We've asked our officers for this report to come to us today so we could have a look back on obviously the outcome and also the council's, the way that it's handled its reaction to the COVID pandemic, which of course has took everybody by not only surprise, but also shock and a real jar for all of us in March 2020. It had obviously a knock-on effect for council services, a knock-on effect for residents, a knock-on effect for everybody's lives in the borough. But we as a cabinet, throughout the period, asked for regular reports to our meetings for updates. And this report today follows the same format as those did for over 12 months. I think we were having those from our chief executive, and we'll go through them bit by bit and just have a look back and also look at some of the lessons learned from this COVID pandemic going forward, not only for council services and improving them, but also that if we're ready for any other either continuation of COVID problems as we get to the winter or anything new that may come along in future years. So the council took a leadership role in the borough, as I said. Also, we took part in county-wide outbreak boards, which oversaw how the county, along with our district colleagues and the county council, responded to the COVID pandemic and also fed into government our views towards the greater picture. That was really important around the time of the various different tier levels that different areas were in, and we influenced the government to delay Staffordshire being put into a higher tier back in the autumn, which was the right thing to do then. Subsequently, though, we all went into the tier 3, if people remember, and then into a lockdown before Christmas. There's also a local version of the outbreak board, which I chair locally, which looks at Newcastle's figures for COVID, looks at some of the enforcement issues, and actually goes down to ward level to work with partners, not only health, but county and others, to ensure we are responding naturally, locally. And also they are ongoing at the moment, both of these boards, and I chaired the local outbreak board last Thursday, I think it was, and we continue to do that as we are seeing out the pandemic. Also, we've convened, when necessary, a multi-party board under the chairmanship of the Deputy Leader, Councillor Sweeney, which has involved key partners and stakeholders in the borough to look at any ways which we can obviously keep cases down, make sure people are getting vaccinated, and generally look at some of the enforcement issues, particularly around the town centre, and particularly with the large student population. So that went well, and we will use that again if necessary as a forum to move forward. And then it goes on to say that since April 2020 there we've had these regular reports coming in. On page 8 at the bottom there is the course of the pandemic and a graph there, which we're all used to graphs when it comes to COVID and case rates going up and down. And you'll see it's been quite a roller coaster ride when we look at it there. But now, of course, we've got through essentially 3 waves, haven't we? And at the moment, we're having a situation where we are, I wouldn't say plateauing, we're going up and down, but we're generally keeping at a level now, which, because of the vaccinations, is seen to be acceptable as we try to get out of this pandemic. And we have high vaccination rates in the borough, just like the rest of the county and the country. and that has obviously changed the game when it comes to COVID. If as we know, we were entering September last year with cases rising, deaths rising, and lockdowns coming down the road, whereas this year deaths are staying relatively low and case numbers have stabilised going forward. Now, the impact of the pandemic on the borough is broken down into a number of sections: economic impact, impact on council services, and then also the impact on the business community, and also on the major programmes that we have as a council, and also the democracy of the council. Then also a look towards the financial recovery and also funding from the government, which has been great help during this pandemic. But the economic impact, as it says in the report, has been, really serious for businesses within the borough and for employees of businesses within the borough, which led to the government bringing in its furlough scheme, and also for the business grants to businesses, which have also had monthly top-ups, and different schemes have come along. And this council has been responsible for giving out those business grants, and that's been a major part of our business, particularly early in the pandemic, to get those initial business grants out to the businesses, and we've been very successful in doing that. It's had an effect on employment in the borough, as you can see under 5 there. But again, that's now steadily declining as we've emerged from lockdowns and got back to some normality. Some wards are more affected than others, and as it says under 6 there, Town, Holditch, Chesterton and Crossheath and Nutton have been impacted through that. But Steve, I'll hand over to you if there's any more to add on the economic impact.
I could just talk about the grants, if I can. I think the council has responded superbly, really, to these grants. We had £40 million to basically give away, but you can't just give money away. You have to do various checks and everything, and the systems have got to be built up from scratch to do this. And one of the tranches of money, we were so anxious to get the money out as soon as we could. We were giving the money away out of reserves because we hadn't actually had the money from the government yet. But we were so anxious that these businesses needed the money that we made the decision to trust the government. They would send the money. They said they were going to, which they did do. But we preempted it and got the money into people's accounts as quick as businesses' accounts. And I think that's the highlight for me, that decision we made to really work with our businesses to keep them going and keep them afloat in these trying times. And I've got to say, I think we've handled that part of pandemic superbly well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think after all councils, when they started, we're in a learning exercise to get this done. Once systems were up in place, as Stephen said, we shifted that money out to the businesses as and when they needed it, and then all the other schemes that have come up along the way, which were monthly payments and all sorts, we've really adapted our processes to get them out to people, which has made a massive difference for businesses locally. And they've gone into hibernation when the high streets closed and the shops, and people working from home or having to be at home when they couldn't actually do any work other than if they were in an office or in a factory or whatever. So I think it's made a massive difference on that. Paul.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I won't go over the bits that the Deputy Leader's just highlighted, but it's important to know that we've been doing other things that perhaps didn't demand so much money, but the input of this council and the officers in relation to the economic development and making sure that we survive COVID and made sure that we're in a good position coming out of COVID. And that's sort of the work we've done with the DWP, the job skills work that we've done with the Spire housing in terms of trying to match jobs to people that have been in an unfortunate position and made unemployed through redundancy or for no fault of their own if they're self-employed, but to make sure that they've got full access to the things that are coming online, them and what are coming online now from the county council backed programmes. So it's important. There's a lot of work going on in the background that perhaps isn't in your face, but it's very important to make sure that Newcastle's in a buoyant position to respond well from the COVID. So I think we've done a fantastic job at the council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments on the economic impact before we move on to the next section? Okay, next section is the community impact. I think starting here by saying, obviously, during the course of the pandemic, just over 400 borough residents have sadly died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. and that has an impact on 400 families, and you can multiply that by the number of people in families and friends, and that is something which we must acknowledge here, and that is the cost of COVID locally. But what we've done from the start as a council is worked very closely with partners to ensure we help those people that are vulnerable. As it says in the report, there's a total of over 7,000 extremely vulnerable residents in the borough. And we've teamed up with support staffs and particularly the Realise Foundation, which is an arm of Aspire, to support over 1,100 residents, and services provided such as shopping being arranged for individuals, prescriptions delivered, and support for those feeling isolated or lonely, which is one of the big things that came out of lockdowns. People that lived on their own are isolated and have never been more so, I think, in probably their lives or any situation that has actually faced the country in living memory, if not longer. And it's still up and running at the moment with the Realise Foundation, working closely with them. They're still regularly contacting people, and people are contacting them and ensuring that the support is there if there is demand for that. But I'll ask Jill, obviously as portfolio holder, you only came in towards the end of this for this portfolio, but a major part of it is health and wellbeing. Any comment, Jill?
I would like to say thank you to the officers and the other agencies for putting this in place so quickly. It's a testament really that we've managed to help and support so many people during this time when they were quite vulnerable, particularly with isolation, which has been a huge problem for a lot of people that are shielding. So thank you.
Comments on the vulnerable section of the paper? Okay, moving on then to the impact on council services. Obviously, what I want to do now is bring in each portfolio holder to talk about the impact. Firstly, I will deal with Jill's Waring's area. Obviously, the big two in hers were the leisure services and the museum, and of course J2 had to close, then it was open again, and it was closed, and now it's fully open again now. And during that period, which we've got an item later on the agenda, there was some issues with the pool, etc., which, if anything, come at a good time. I suppose it did come at a time when we couldn't have operated the leisure facility anyway. So lost income from that, of course, which we've been obviously able to claim that back off the government as part of the funding for them, which we'll talk about more later. Membership obviously was frozen, and as you can see the figures there of 1,249, but since J2 is up and running again, we now, I believe, over 2,000 members, so that membership is coming back. Museum obviously closed with all the other public buildings, and I think one of the points from that is we were also doing an expansion job on the museum, so that kicked in towards the end of the lockdown periods and through this period we're in at the moment. So again, when the museum opens, a fair wind, we will have no restrictions and we'll be able to relaunch our museum. Going to move on to environmental health and waste management and street scene and bereavement services, which comes under Trevor Johnson.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I think the recycling, residual and garden waste we kept at full capacity right through this pandemic and so far. And I think it's a great credit to all the operatives on this. I mean, I think we've outperformed every other local authority in Staffordshire and most probably Shropshire as well. On a street scene, we've had a little bit of one or two problems, but then again, we've used that team to back up the waste management team, and it's all coming back to normal again now. Okay. Oh, shall we have a look at bereavement services as well? Yes, while we're going. I mean, we had all these things in place for some great, mass burials, but nothing happened really, because basically our death rate last year was comparable to the year before that. Then just trying to say, yeah, we increased capacity to 10 cremations a day from 10 to 15, but we didn't need it. So, okay.
And then finally, environmental health.
Environmental health, as we know, they have been so stretched on COVID and Walleys. So one or two services have suffered, but once again, that is coming back online now and we're getting back to normal.
We've had a perfect storm when it comes to environmental health, haven't we, during this period? Not only have we had the COVID pandemic, which has meant a lot of inspections, and a lot of the COVID laws that were passed were based on enforcement. And again, in Newcastle District and Borough, that is only going to be our environmental health team, which is a very small one. And then, of course, we've had the Walleys Quarry gas stink, which we've got later on the agenda, which is again is coming from the same small team of staff to deal with. But thank you for that, Trevor. I think it's a valid point to make on the bereavement services that we haven't seen a massive increase, and that it's on par with previous years. And I think when we talk about that 400 people, obviously it seems as if over an amount of time that seems to even out with people that would have unfortunately passed away anyway. So, but open it up for comments on that, Steve.
If I can just focus on the waste management, really, I think it says here about the 4 months for the food collections being put in your bin. But apart from that, I think this council's, I eulogise it too much, but I think it's been absolutely fantastic the way they've picked up the baton, and people have swapped jobs and moved around and done this and that to help everything out to keep these services going. And as we're all residents of Newcastle, and I can't, my apart from the food bit for 4 months, my waste collections have worked absolutely fine. There's been no disruption to me, and I bet there's not many parts of the country that people can stand up in front of everybody and say that the services have gone as well and carried on as well as ours have. And I think that's credit to the officers of the council, and credit to the people who work for the council. I think we've had a flexible approach to their work lives to get us through this dreadful crisis. But thank you, Leader.
And one point, of course, is we brought in the major new recycling system during the latter stages of the first lockdown. So we kept on programme with that. And in fact, we're actually ahead of what we wanted to do, which has created that excellent new recycling system, which again is a massive improvement on the previous one. Going to bring in Paul now.
Thanks, Leader. Just wanted a brief word on the bereavement services. I think it's I'm certainly relieved that we didn't need to call upon the emergency situation that we put in place. And I think we can count our lucky stars that we dodged a major bullet on that one. And whilst I wouldn't wish any disingenuous influence to come on those who sadly departed, or those families that's been impacted by this, this has been a by and large a positive thing for the Borough of Newcastle, but also a thanks for the public that have adhered to the COVID situations and abided by the lockdown rules and prevented it from being a lot worse than it could have been in terms of the fatalities that we've had to endure. So I think it's a relief all round, I think, that we haven't had to call upon those services, and it's a credit to the team that have managed us through that period. Thank you.
I'm sure we'd all agree with Paul's sentiment on that. I'm going to bring you back in now straight away, Paul, on the planning service in your portfolio, obviously reaction during the pandemic.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I think my thanks go to Mr. Sean Fleet, the Head of Planning Services, and his team for doing a magnificent job. I think it's fair to say that they responded very quickly to the challenge of hybrid working in terms of throughout the pandemic, working from home. The planning team have by and large continued to deliver the service with absolute minimal disruption to that, and key performance indicators have remained high and on target completely throughout that. So I've got nothing but admiration and thanks for the planning service. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And Jill, on the issues of housing, homelessness and temporary accommodation.
Yeah, I have to say I seem to be saying thank you a lot just lately, but I do say thank you to the officers, and particularly the homeless team, because they saw a significant increase in demand in the early times of the pandemic. The government did bring in a scheme to ensure that everybody had safe accommodation, which we managed to do. And, that's no small thing, to ensure that everybody who's at risk of being homeless or is homeless has somewhere safe to be. It's the same with temporary accommodation. That remained at a manageable level, which I'm really pleased about, because it shows that everybody did such a good job at that time when it was needed.
Jill, Obviously, during this period, we've tried to keep the council plan on track. Part of that is the major projects which we were trying to move forward and still trying to move forward and have moved forward in the borough, particularly associated with the Future High Streets Fund, which we had confirmation of over £11 million investment, and work is now beginning on the Rycroft site with the demolishing of the former civic offices. And then also the town deal, both for kids deals for Kidsgrove and for Newcastle, over 16 million for Kidsgrove, 23.5 for Newcastle. And we're pressing ahead with those schemes throughout this. We put the bids together during the pandemic and got confirmation from the government that the money is there for us, and now we're developing the schemes. Kidsgrove Sports Centre is now in the throes of its refurbishment and will open by the end of the spring next year. So we've managed to keep things ticking over in that department, and well done to our officers dealing with those, and member support has made push these forward, and thank you to our local MP for both Kidsgrove and Newcastle, who've pushed particularly on the town deals for us to ensure we got that funding. And we've tried to do business as usual on those and press forward on those to get those results as soon as possible, and we'll continue to do that, no matter what the future brings, pandemic or none in the future. I just want to do a bit now on the town centre, Steve, and hand over to you, because obviously one of the major impacts really on our town centres and our shopping parades, for example, as well, not just in our villages, small Chestertons and Silverdales of this world, as well as Kidsgroves and Newcastle town centres. But just some comments on that and how we've dealt with that, and we've had continual openings and closings and reopenings, it seems, over the period. But Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As well as that, of course, we've got the advanced town deal funding, we've got the town deal, and we've got the Future High Streets funding all going on at the same time. I was walking through the town today and I saw somebody waving at me from the old Pikes the Jewellers shop on Lancaster Buildings, and that's getting ready to open on Tuesday as a skills centre, which again is high street funding. No, it's advanced town deal funding that it's paid for that. And I think people can now start to see the subways, the new CCTV that's going into place. It's a lot brighter an area, the Grosvenor subways are. The other ones are all getting painted and retiled. We've put a lot of effort into our market to try to make it better, regenerate it, rejuvenate it, give reinvigorating something, a boost. That's the word, a boost. And I think we're succeeding. I'm not saying we're there yet, but this is an ancient market town, and I think the market is integral to it. The idea that there is no future in markets, I don't believe this. I don't believe there's no future in town centres. The town centres just got to adapt, and you give something that people want, and they will come to it. A lot of people in this room went to the Artisan Market on the Bank Holiday Monday. We always get shown a picture of old Newcastle and of the market as it was, black and white pictures, probably in the 50s or the 60s or something. And this is what Newcastle's like, blah, blah. Well, there was a picture in the Sentinel that you could put alongside that, and I would say it was as good, if not better than that. And I think, say, you give people something to come in for, and people come in, and people don't come in and mess about on a Sunday, or it was on a Monday, this one was. They don't come to mess about, they come to spend money. And you could just, the whole place was absolutely buzzing. So, this is what we're aspiring to achieve. This is what when we came into the town, we came into control of the council. This is one of our major aspirations, was try to boost the town. I'll use boost again, boost the town centre. And I think significant progress is being made. And I always say this to everybody: if ever you get a chance to go to one of these artisan markets, go, because it is absolutely excellent. Really, really good. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Market Man, we'll call you from now on. I think it's shown the resilience of our town centre during this. We've, as I said before, I brought Steve in, we've had, the lockdowns, the opening up the lockdowns, and I can think of 3 occasions when we've relaunched the market during this period with social distancing. One was with masks and, hand sanitizers all over the place. And it worked really well and was really well attended. I think people wanted to get out and about again. And of course, travel again, even though travel's to further distances is now coming back. In the early days, people weren't travelling further than their local town. So our town benefited, businesses benefited when they were allowed to open up. And as Stephen has said, even a couple of Sundays ago, the market was really busy. So hopefully the town centre has won more supporters, that people will come in and use the town centre, particularly on a lovely day like this. The town centre is busy. So there's a bright future, I think, for our town, and particularly for the market. And also with the town deal and the Future High Street Fund, we have money now to put behind those plans to really enhance it going forward. So that's that. Any other comments on town centre from any members? Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Yes, when you look at the markets, they've done particularly well. When you think about how it was before, it's a total contrast to what was in place before we took over administration. And it just goes to show you with the right combination of personnel and people to push these things, what can be achieved, even in the background scenario of COVID. I join the previous member in terms of the excitement of the way the market's going for the town centre and to rejuvenate that. I'm not saying that it's going to sort out all the problems in one foul swoop, but it's certainly give it the building blocks. We just need to be able to capitalise on this and hope that the people that occupy the town centre shops can actually share some equity in terms of enthusiasm and interacting, because if you know that the people are coming in for the markets, they'll also come in for the shops if they're what people want, and that's the key thing. It has to be aimed at what people want, and not what was before. That has, I think, been sadly demonstrated by the sad demise of some towns and streets, that there's a clear disparity between those people who shop online and those that actually come in for that customer experience. So that's the sort of thing I'm really looking forward to the market being able to underpin, and I hope that the success that it's enjoying at the moment continues. Thank you.
Well, yeah, completely agree. And even though some of the bigger names, which haven't just been lost from Newcastle, Laura Ashley and some others during the pandemic, that's happened across the country, not just in Newcastle. We have had some smaller businesses opening up, which and a nice, lovely cafe on one of the streets, which is really nice. It's opened up, is doing really a roaring trade as well. So there is some green shoots as well in our town centre, and let's hope that we manage to stay out of lockdowns as we move forward, so that people can come in and enjoy that. Next section is democracy. Like all councils, as soon as the pandemic kicked in, we suspended meetings and moved to Zoom platforms and Teams meetings. But we did fairly early last September move to a hybrid format, one of the first councils in the country to have a hybrid council meeting. And we've developed that as we move forward, as restrictions have gone up and down. But of course, recently we moved back to full in-person meetings as the law now requires. But I think a testament to our IT team at the council that we managed to get all of our members on Teams and key staff on Teams almost within the first week of lockdown. And that has proved to be very effective in keeping council business going and also keeping the democracy going. And also particularly, for example, the ones where the public interacts, such as the planning committee, which was able to still function and deliberate on planning applications with a remote format, which worked really well. Next section, the last but one section, is the financial recovery. And this is all about the funding aspect and the hit the council has taken and the government funding that we've received to mitigate that. But I'll hand over to Steve to give us the highlights of that.
Well, the highlight really is on 3.1. The council secured over £5 million from central government for the financial year. In the spring of this year, no, that's not this year, last year, we were massively concerned we were going to run out of money, and we lobbied hard. The MPs have lobbied for us, the LG have, we have, the council officers have, and the government listened. And the £5 million that they've given us has basically replaced the money that we've lost, because Jubilee 2 shut, huge effect to us. Car parking, huge effect to that. And we need the money. The government's come and did what it said, and that's there's all different grants quoting here. I don't really read them all out. but it made a massive difference to us. And I think great credit to the government for listening to what us and presumably every other council in the country said the same sort of things, and actually doing what it said it would do, and giving us the funding that we needed to carry on, so that the position we were in is down to that, really. Thank you.
Yeah, and during the dark days of the first lockdown, which we didn't know when that was going to end, I think that sort of lobbying that took place, and we were knocking at an open door, I think, particularly with the Secretary of State, Robert Jemrick, who's backed local councils throughout, whether it's for money for homelessness, whether it's to replace lost income, as Stephen said, or others. It's all detailed in the report, particularly between 3.6 and 3.11. And we know the government had our back there and saw us through the crisis. And I think we've paid them back by providing services still and getting that COVID services and that COVID response out efficiently, like with the business grants, etc. So the last item on this report is to look at some lessons learned. And it was when we emerged from the first lockdown and we were careering towards the second lockdown, but we didn't know at that stage. We, myself and officers in the cabinet, decided to start to take stock on where we were and look at some of those lessons learned, and that formed the One Council programme, which is now ongoing, which is going to contribute not only towards a more efficiently run council, but also better services and more efficient services to the public, and also a financial saving as well, because budgets are going to be tough over the next few years. But a number of sections which are detailed in the report where we want to obviously learn lessons. It is the silo working. Even every authority's tried to break down silos over the years, but when you come into a crisis, a national crisis, a once-in-a-lifetime crisis, and you stress test all of those, you can see where things aren't, where there is no crossover, where there is no working together as it should be, not only inside the council, but with partners. And we've been able to address some of those basically on the job of a major crisis, but learning from that to ensure that those silos don't reappear, barriers between areas, and we'll ensure that's part of the One Council programme as well. Agile working, talked about the fact that we moved online very quickly, even though as businesses are doing now, staff are being brought back into the building. We'll never lose that remote agile working bit, and I think it's given it a shot in the arm. There was always plans to do that. We've seen it in practice because we've had to do it, and there's efficiency savings there, there's productivity savings there, but also there's still a need for people to come in and interact in an office environment. Will ensure that happens as well. Going online, which is the next one, we've talked about that, and I think a lot of people have been accessing council services online because they haven't been able to come into this building because it was closed for so long, with the library being closed as well. And we are taking forward a revamp of our website with the online forms and services on there, which are more responsive. Our website is a bit dated, and part of the One Council agenda is that we push that forward so that people can access services 24 hours a day if they wish online, have a good, reliable phone service, and also then to provide face-to-face for those that want it in this building during opening hours. And the last one, lessons learned, is working with partners. And I think we've worked really closely with the County Council and with partners such as Aspire through the Realise Foundation. We need to keep those links up, particularly with working with the County Council, for example, enhancing both the county and the borough deliver services on the same patch. We should work together more to ensure we've got efficiencies and that we're delivering a good service to residents and enhancing the two tiers, it's called. And it's in the last sentence of the report there that that's the way we should go. And I know that Robert Jemrick, the Secretary of State, wishes councils to go down that route, not only to make savings, but to provide better services. And the County Council are committed to that, as we are, along with all the other districts in the county. So just open it up to any comments on lessons learned, Paul.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, I endorse everything you just said, but I want to particularly mention agile working. I think that's been key for me, and I think there's lessons massively that we've learned and also taken beyond COVID. The fact that we've been able to agilely work with remote partners, voluntary organisations. And what's been very key to me is especially working with, say, parish councils. There was an instance where parish councils needed to talk to the head of planning and his team, the policy team, on a matter about the emerging the joint local plan as it was then, but then the local plan as it is now, in terms of their fears in terms of neighbourhood development plans, and they wanted to know face to face and hear it, which the planning service is obliged via Zoom, and particularly I've noticed from the 6 parish councils that I represent as a county councillor, that people's engagement, particularly the public, has been more forthcoming and more interactive. They've thought, well, okay, I get in from home. It doesn't take much to put on the laptop or my PC and actually make myself available at a drop of a hat in terms of engaging with the process, whereas before they would perhaps have to consider in a cold, dark winter's night having to travel somewhere to engage. So that's something I think we can particularly take away from this as a massive positive, and something that we can work both as a council and as individual members to take forward the objectives of the council and to work more transparently and more informative and more agile, as I said previously, that this is going to be key to taking services forward. And I think it's what the public expect now from modern councils, and I think it's something we need to take forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. No, I just reiterate really what I said earlier. On the silo working, examples of this included staff retraining to work on helplines, bereavement services and refuse collection in order to maintain these core services, which I think is one of the great gains that people have knuckled down and said, well, we'll do something else now because we want to get this done. It's got to be done. And they've really responded well. And I think that's worth highlighting. Thank you.
Thank you. And just 2 things to end on before we move to recommendations. I think during every debate we've had about this, when we're having the monthly reports, we've always said thank you to the work that our staff have done at every level, whether that be out on the front line, whether that's working from home, dealing with planning applications, or on the phone lines. I think I'll just reiterate that really to all staff at all levels, to the executive management team that are in this room today, to the frontline workers out in the cleaning the streets and collecting the refuge. On behalf of the residents of the borough, I say thank you to them. And then secondly, of course, we just going back to the obviously the documented 400 people that have died of COVID. I think 2 things for me is thank you to the health workers and the hospital that have done so much to help people. And we are giving, the council decided at its last meeting to give the freedom of the borough to the local hospital, and that ceremony is taking place later in the month, which is to everybody working there who's gone beyond and above to deliver services and save lives during this period. I think is brilliant, and I will be happy to move the recommendation for that at the ceremony for the freedom of the borough later in the month. And then also we will work with partners and talk to fellow councillors about a fitting memorial for those that died. We aren't through this yet. When we are through it and back to normal, I think we need to look at how we have a fitting memorial to this. It has been something that's once in a lifetime. It's more than a war, isn't it? Really, it's more than the Second World War, because it's been so into everybody so personally. It's been affected more than ever. You could still go out and still go to the pub during the war, couldn't you? But you couldn't even do that. And if you lived alone or you were elderly, you were housebound and not allowed to go out. So it's been a completely different experience, something that we would never have thought would have happened. And I quote the chief executive who said many times, and it's so true, that we've always prepared for losing the buildings. If the building burned down, if Castle House burned down, what do we do? Well, it wasn't the problem here. We actually lost the people. The people weren't allowed to come in. So we had to make a complete and utter turnaround and be able to let them do their jobs from home, or be coordinating their jobs from home for those that had to go out and still had to go out for street cleaning and refuge collections, etc. So it's a completely different situation than we've ever experienced. And I think we'll be bringing more ideas forward on how we can do a memorial about the COVID pandemic to recognise those that passed away. But we certainly are, later in the month, recognising the local hospital by giving them freedom of the borough. So recommendations before us that we note the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the community of Newcastle under Lyme and council services. I think we've done that, and we've had a good debate about it and talked about some of the learning that comes out of it. And then secondly, we invite the Finance, Performance and Resource Scrutiny Committee to review the impact of the pandemic on council services at its next meeting. So those are recommendations. Do we all agree?
Agree.
Thank you. We'll move back to our agenda. The next item is the Walleys Quarry odour issues update. This is a supplementary and is on the supplementary pack. Obviously, this has seemed to be going arm in arm, in tandem to really major issues affecting the borough, particularly the Newcastle wards, particularly, even though we have reports of odours from Kidsgrove and the rural area as well. Going along at the same time of COVID, and we've been having regular updates on the council's response to that, on questioning the EA's response, and also on obviously the community's response and how we've been supporting them. The major issue since the last meeting, when we agreed to the council launch an abatement notice process for statutory nuisance, is that we've heard back that has been appealed. So I'm just going to hand over to the Chief Executive now just to give us an update on the current up-to-date situation as things are changing, obviously, daily as we get more information on that. So over to you, Martin.
Okay, thanks, Leader. Yeah, at your last meeting, we took you through the evidence base that had been assembled around this particular issue. I seem to be very loud, and that led to on the 13th of August, we served an abatement notice on Walleys Quarry Limited in relation to the offensive odours that come from the site. That notice has now been appealed. There was a 21-day window for that to happen. That has been appealed to the Magistrates Court. So we now enter into a legal process as far as this is concerned. And the first part of that will be a case management hearing that will happen probably in the next couple of weeks, where we will be going to court and talking about how best to progress the matter of determining the abatement notice. So that will look at things like how much evidence will need to be presented, how much time will need to be allocated to this, looking at issues such as discovery, the information that each party will need from the other, etc., in order to make this happen. The other thing that's likely to be discussed at that stage is this question of mediation. Increasingly, we're seeing mediation being a key part of the court system, where in order to avoid the time and the cost of litigation, there's an attempt to see whether or not issues such as this can actually be resolved outside of the court process, but with a solution that is actually legally binding. So again, we would explore that at that case management hearing. We're at this stage, we're very much in the hands of the court in terms of timing, because the first of these is the case management hearing. We haven't got a date for that yet. And then how quickly things move in terms of the discovery process, and also whether or not there is a requirement to do the mediation, etc. So there's a little uncertainty as to exactly what the time frame will be, but we will certainly be pushing to move this forward as swiftly as we can. You will see in the rest of the report that, you know, while the complaint data, for example, has eased off slightly compared to what we were looking at the peak of this problem, we're still looking, for example, at August, at 2,300 complaints coming into the Environment Agency, 833 complaints coming into the council. That's still a level of complaints that is well in excess of what we would get on any other issues. The air quality monitoring is showing some signs of improvement, certainly in 3 of the monitoring stations. You will see that Silverdale Cemetery, Silverdale Road, and the fire station, the levels of hydrogen sulfide at those is now, over the last sort of 4 months, has been steadily down in terms of the proportion of time that they're above the annoyance level. The monitoring station at Gallingale I think it is altogether more problematic. That has consistently been the station that gives us the highest levels of nuisance readings. So last week of August, there looking at being above the nuisance level or the annoyance level for 17% of the time. So we had a couple of weeks of respite, if you like, there, but that has gone back up. We have also now purchased 2 handheld Jerome monitoring devices. If you remember, we hired these at various times during the process of trying to assemble the evidence. We've got these now both to keep a track on what's happening inside properties and also to provide some assurance back to the community in terms of gas levels, etc. And I guess the other significant thing that has happened and has really, I guess, accelerated since your last meeting has been the community tensions around this and the protests. So they've gone over the last couple of weeks to an almost daily demonstrations at the site, and as it says in the report, that has resulted in some arrests by the police, 4 arrests by the police. So I think as far as this is concerned, we're, in terms of the problem, we're certainly not out of the woods yet. We've still got high complaint levels. We've still got significant exceedances of that annoyance threshold, and we are now in what could be a fairly lengthy process in terms of the legal process around this.
Thank you for that update, Martin. I think during the summer we were told by the experts at the EA that they would expect levels to fall and complaints to drop. But of course, now we're entering the autumn period. I think even over the last week, I've smelt more than I've smelt recently. I think the town has smelt more than it's smelt recently, and also the levels and intensity is increasing again. So it will be interesting to see what the monitoring equipment gives for the end of August and into September. I think it might show a deterioration. The multi-party agency group, which you represent, you're the council's representative on there, Martin. I understand the EA are planning some other works or not demanding, that's the wrong word, asking the operator to carry out some other works which they hope will deal with this issue related to gas wells.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the Environment Agency, as we said before, are the lead regulator for this site, and they have they've been working with Walleys Quarry Limited, formerly known as RED, to RED have produced a new gas management plan for the site that sees additional wells being opened and an additional, basically an increase in the activity around gas management. The practice that's being followed is one of containing the gas, capturing the gas, and then destroying the gas. One of the critical steps in terms of containing the gas will be increasing the amount of capping that goes on site. And the Environment Agency have required an increase in capping. There's been some talk of a product called PosiShell, which is due to be arriving at the site and being deployed imminently. And if that doesn't materialise, then the direction of the EA on the site is still that capping needs to continue via clay or via some other means in order to contain the gas. And then I think it's scheduled for next week to be increasing the number of wells active on the site.
Last time the operator drilled wells at the request of the Environment Agency coincided with one of the worst emissions of toxic gas that we had. We don't know how bad that was because the EA hadn't turned the monitoring equipment on that weekend. But if we're now drilling many more wells, do we have confidence that the company, the operator, is going to do that correctly so that there's not going to be a large escape of gas while they're actually doing this? And particularly then if they start on a Thursday and Friday and then don't come back until the Monday, an entire weekend of emissions of plumes of toxic gas.
I'm advised that the Environment Agency are working closely with them in terms of how they will do that gas management so that it so that the new wells have if you like, minimal impact. As I say, next week is the week that is scheduled for those wells to be opened. So we will watch with interest the impact, if any, that has on the gas levels.
We'll all be sniffing with interest as well, won't we, Martin? But the other thing is, of course, that you mentioned the Posy Shell. I mean, anybody who wants to do some research on Posy Shell will not be encouraged by what they see from the manufacturer. It is useful in some respects, but whether it will be useful for the sealing of the flanks of the landfill, I can't see from what I've seen that it's going to do that. And this was the big hope of the EA that they have been PRing for months. So this was going to be the great thing that was going to lead to extra capping, that was going to reduce the odours. Again, we don't know when that's going to happen. It was promised in July. It was promised in August. We're in September. We're not sure whether it's arrived on site or has been put into place, when it will be put into place. But again, through the incident management multi-party group, I think we need to be pressing the EA to ensure that this is useful application and that it actually does happen, because at the moment residents don't have any faith in either of those things.
The latest on the Posy Shell is that we're advised that it is in the country and will be arriving on site this week. So, but we have had similar assurances before, so we await to see. And it's not a permanent capping solution; it's an interim capping solution. So ultimately, it'll increase the amount of capping on the site, but it will, in due course, need to be replaced or supplemented with proper permanent capping.
Thank you, Martin. Just on the community tensions, we've all seen the headlines. We've all seen the criticism of the police. And I've been involved in some of the protests, and it's always been peaceful. It's always been law-abiding, and the police has almost been a bit like a carnival atmosphere at these. It has turned different, hasn't it, over the last few weeks, which is something we should consider and talk about and give our position on. I mean, my view is that unfortunately the site is a legal site. It has a permit. The people that can remove that permit and make it an illegal site if it starts still taking lorries would be the Environment Agency. They've chosen not to suspend, not to do anything to curtail the operation there. So it is a law-abiding landfill, unfortunately, and the police, I think, have to respect that, or they'll be in trouble in another respect of action by the operator against them. So my understanding is, as long as the demonstration it keeps within the law, the police will support that. And I think when it has, the demonstrations have gone further than that, the police have really been very sort of liberal with their approach, which again has got criticism coming in from the operator that they aren't protecting them. So it's a very difficult situation for the police. I've seen some comments on social media. I've also seen some comments from the opposition councillors on this council, which I think is unfortunate, sort of align themselves with the Kill the Bill campaign, etc. And yet the police are only currently enforcing the existing legislation. The bill they talk about has not even got anywhere near being made law yet. So I think it's highly inappropriate for councillors to do that, and hopefully have a debate at that at a future full council. I'm willing to do that. But I think I back the position of the police. I also back the position of the residents who are able to protest lawfully, which they are doing. But if people do go further than that and try to block the entrance, there seems to be no alternative for the police other than to do what they have to do to uphold the law, because the site is a legal site with a permit. If it wasn't, the police would be able to stop and barricade the entrance themselves to stop things going in. They can't. So I've got great sympathy for the police side of the house, for the residents, and I would urge all residents to protest lawfully, which 99% of them are doing that, and continue to do that because they've got a good cause. This is a problem which needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed soon. I fear we're heading for a winter and an autumn and winter of stink if we don't get some action from the Environment Agency, which always seems to come back to the Environment Agency because they have the powers which they have decided not to use in this respect to curtail the operations, and also to take stronger action, I believe, against the operator to stop this stink. I'm going to open it up now for comments from Cabinet members. Bring in Steve first and then Paul.
Yeah, it's what I said last time, to be honest with you, Leader. It's this chart with the percentages on, make sure you read the opening paragraph of it when it says these aren't the times that it smells. It might smell 100% of the time. These are the times it smells above the limit. So Gallingale, for example, is 17%. It might be smelling 100% of the time, but 17% of the time it's above the WHO annoyance threshold. And if you don't read that first bit, you think, oh, it's nearly gone away when it hasn't, has it? What I would like to ask, I probably should know this, but I don't, I'm afraid. This map that we've got attached with a nuisance designated zone. What exactly is that?
As part of the process for serving abatement notice, you actually need to define an area within which the nuisance needs to be abated. And that needs to be, if you like, a credible area in terms of where the nuisance is, and needs to be defined so that it's not a general term like in Newcastle. So this is a zone that's been arrived at. It's roughly 1 kilometre in diameter, which from our modelling shows that this is, if you like, the most intensely affected area and where reoccurrences are most likely to impact. Now, there are, one of the things I'd just be very clear on, there are people well beyond this that do complain about the odours, that have complained about the odours, that are impacted by them from time to time. If we can get the odour abated within that zone, it will also be abated outside of that zone.
Paul.
Thank you, Leader. I won't duplicate what's been said already, but just to just to re-emphasise that this is about the residents, particularly living in that marked out area, but the other areas that are affected by this and have to live with this on a day-to-day, 24-hour a day, day in, day out. It's something that simply can't continue. There has to be some sort of plan in terms of how this is going to be managed. If it is that the Walleys Quarry site is to remain open, it needs to behave itself in terms of its obligations to those poor, unfortunate people that are living close by. And it needs to make sure that things are in place to make sure that the lifetime of the site can be managed effectively and without the continuous extraneous odour issues that it experiences today. So yes, carry on.
Thank you. Any comments, Trevor?
Just ask about this material they want to cap with. Is it like a bentonite, like a slurry treatment, I've read, isn't it? So it's quite a quick operation. So we should be able to see some results fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's applied as a slurry. It's spread as a slurry, so it can actually bind loose material together. It can get into nooks and crannies and provide a seal over the surface. So that should have, in the areas that are covered, that should have an impact. And I think that we await to see what impact it can have on the flanks, because I think the flanks appear to be a particularly problematic area.
That depends on it actually ever happening, Trevor, because we were promised in July and August. So keep labouring the point, but keep labouring the point as it was promised, and it hasn't happened so far. Anything to add, Jill?
I think I'm probably the same as most of the residents. I'll be looking to see what the outcome of all this and the action that we've taken, and also the Environmental Agency. I live outside the area that's been shown on the map, but obviously there's a lot of households that are affected by that don't live within that area.
Thank you, Jill. Some other associated issues, really, just to touch on before we move on, of course, is the community in the name of one of the younger people that's affected by this. The young boy have obviously taken the judicial review action against the Environment Agency. We're still waiting for that. It's been getting on for 3 weeks now since the judge closed that at the High Court in London. That is, of course, taking on the EA, the Environment Agency. So it'll be interesting to see what the outcome of that is. We await that outcome from that. I think what we do on our abatement notice is we keep forcing the pace as much as we can and making the case that something needs to be done about this, and then it needs to be abated, that nuisance does. But Paul, you just wanted to come in, sorry.
Yeah, just a brief question to our Chief Executive. Has there been any recent involvement in terms of the remedial work, that actually efforts are made to contain the gases and use them in terms of a capture, and maybe using that as a way to power? Some sites I know do develop effective gas capture techniques to exploit that and to sell on. I just wondered if that had been, if there'd been any further work in exploring those avenues. Thank you.
Yeah, as I said, the technique or the strategy on the site is to contain the gas, collect the gas, and destroy the gas. And that destruction can take place on that site in either one of two ways. One is there are gas engines that use the gas and generate electricity that's fed into the grid. Or there is also a facility to flare the gas if they're not able to, for whatever reason, to actually use it to generate electricity. But certainly that model of using the gas for power is central to what happens on the site.
And has there been any scope to increase that capacity to deal with the gases that obviously are escaping on a big scale?
Yeah, that's the work that's gone on to increase the capping on the site, the work that the leader mentioned earlier in terms of opening additional gas wells and collecting more of the gas. And I think there's also been an extra flare that's been on the site for the last while to enable more gas to be collected and destroyed in that way. And certainly the statistics for this year indicate that there has been an increase in the amount of gas that's going through that gas management process. The gas management process, though, cannot touch what is called fugitive gas or fugitive emissions. So that's the stuff that is simply leaking from the flanks or leaking through uncapped areas of the site.
Thanks for that.
Just two other issues. Obviously, at previous cabinets, we've highlighted that we've wrote to the government relating to respite care, wrote to the Secretary of State. Unfortunately, I haven't received a response to that now, and it's over a month or so, so very disappointing. I have chased that up with our MP a week or so ago, still haven't received anything. So also, I've requested our MP, if we can, able to get a meeting with the Secretary of State to discuss this. I haven't heard anything back from that at the moment. Neither. So this is very disappointing. This goes on the back of the lack of response or appropriate response from the minister, and it's just very disappointing, and something I continually press with our MP Aaron Bell to get some resolution to some of the issues, and that the government take more action and also take more responsibility for the lack of action, I believe, and a lot of people believe, is coming from the EA. Last item is issue with lorries. That is a major issue as well. Not a stink issue, not a gas issue. This is the lorries that are going into the site from it seems to be, if you look at the side of the vehicles, from all over the country, passing numerous landfills to get to this landfill. So there must be an attraction of sealed lorries coming to this one and not going to their local landfill. And this is causing stacking outside and serious traffic problems and obstruction of entrances, such as the Garner's Garden Centre next door. I've spoken to the police about this. It is an enforcement issue for them. It is obstruction. Just as I have backed the police earlier in maintaining the law relating to protests, the police also should uphold the law when it comes to no obstruction of the entrance and dealing with these lorries that are stacking, particularly early in the morning, creating dangerous traffic conditions on that road, and I would expect the police to take as much action there as they have done in enforcing the law when it comes to illegal protests. I will follow that up with the local police commander after, because even in the last few days there has been stacking instances outside of the quarry that can't be allowed to continue. And, you know, I want to see arrests made in that respect, just as arrests have been made against protesters. That is, in my book, illegal action to stack and obstruct entrances with lorries, whatever hour of the day, outside Walleys Quarry landfill. Any other comments before we move to the recommendations? Recommendations in the report then are that we obviously note that despite the further work, there are still issues, significant complaints and issues with odours emanating from Walleys Quarry landfill. And then officers have updated us on the abatement notice issue, that we're now into a legal battle, in my own words, I would say, with the appeal. And then we note the work to address the ongoing issues experienced by residents and businesses. And again, just to point out, this council stands firmly with the residents in fighting this. That's why we've done the abatement notice process, to ensure that we could be doing everything within our powers to enable, you know, this scourge on the borough to be relieved, and for people to have, you know, get back to their normal lives than those people are affected. So those recommendations, all agreed? Moving back to our agenda, next item is the local plan issues and strategic options. Hand over to Paul, who's going to introduce this.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, this is to seek Cabinet approval to undertake this period of not less than 6 weeks of public consultation on the draft local plan issues and strategic options paper. Now, it's to make sure that the process of adopting the local plan is undertaken in accordance with the requirements of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. Local plans, as we all know, are a requirement set out for government under the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, and it is expected by the present government framework that local government should have local plans in place by the end of 2023. Which brings me on nicely to the other point, which links into the early work that we've been doing with COVID. And while COVID has been upon us, our planning team has worked exceptionally well in terms of taking us out of our obligations with Stoke-on-Trent and bringing us into line with our own local plan process. As we've outlined before, this needs to be restarted in terms of where we go, but our overall game is to bring the draft local plan into play by the end of 2023. Now, the first item in terms of taking the plan to adoption is to be set out, notably in the same planning regulations of 2012 and the Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. And the three key stages that consist of a consultation process. And this is where the issues and options stage of this process comes into play, and hence this paper before you, members. It's expected that by presenting the issues and strategic options, this is a way of canvassing and supporting our policies in terms of our local plan, taking it forward. This is not about specific sites, although it's mentioned later in the report about specific growth sites that we are under consideration, and we're inviting key stakeholders and the public alike to comment on. It should be noted that the plan will need to be supported by evidence to show how the impacts are generated through development and how can be mitigated where impact does occur, and that all alternative options are being considered. Now, at Newcastle at the present time, we are fast running out of the brownfield sites to take into housing, and to sit back and do absolutely nothing would put this authority in massive risk of being at the beck and call of developers in terms of where development is. We don't want that to happen. As administration, we've taken this mantle now from the previous administration, and with the help of an excellent planning team, exceptional policy team, that we've been able to bring this work back online and on track and in pace. On pace and in line with what we want to do as a council. We also need to bring the sustainability appraisal and habitats regulations assessment into the overarching studies that look at the plan as a whole. And you look on page 21, 2.8, it absolutely defines the strategic options paper as a structured around our vision and the 12 strategic objectives which are set out in section 3, and really reads basically by 2040, the borough will have delivered sustainable new homes and jobs meeting local needs and providing more opportunities for people. We will have respected, improved the character and distinctiveness of our Staffordshire market towns, villages and rural areas, with a particular focus on broadening our network of neighbourhood plans. We will have enabled new infrastructure supported by the growth of businesses and our university, whilst preserving and enhancing our natural and built assets and taking action to tackle the impacts of climate change. Now that underpins it nicely. The strategic objectives are let out there following that vision statement there that you can read in your reports. But there's going to be a proposal of 6 growth directions for the wider spatial strategy that lie heart of the consultation process. And these may be adopted in the subsequent draft local plan that we need to bring online next summer. And just to reiterate, this is not about site specific, but this is about the policies of growth areas we're seeking opinion on over the next few years. The consultation is going to take place in autumn this year. We're looking at the moment, we've had, I was talking to the planning officers yesterday, and they outlined that we're looking at the moment to look at possibility around about October the 18th time to possibly go out to consultation. This will be backed up with comms and advertising in terms of how that's going to be rolled out and when it does go online. But we're proposing 6 great sites, and people will notice, as well as you members, that a lot of those growth areas mentioned are taken out of Greenbelt. Now, it is this intention of this council not to use Greenbelt as a carte blanche for development in Newcastle, but site-specific or area-specific sites. We're looking at areas of growth. And where that proposal exists, we want to know what the appetite is for that out there in the community, where the public want to see growth or not. But bearing in mind, we need to see growth of some sort. We can actually propose that the government baseline of a minimum housing provision for the 20 to 2040 period, or we could go for a mid-growth period, or we could go to a high growth period, which would mean that we'll have substantial challenges in making sure that we meet housing provision targets year on year. The document looks at meeting areas of specific housing need, and this will include gypsy and travellers sites, affordable housing, and also recently we've had a revamped self-build units in terms of our website. We've been able to present that. It's hoped that the strategic employment sites are presented at the same time as this growth corridor adjacent to Junction 16 and the M6. Now, it should be noted that we need to provide evidence to where we go in terms of our direction. This is to start that process off. The draft may be structured on one of the proposed growth directions, or it may be a combination of these growth directions. But we can't sit by and not propose anything. So we're not watching to say, okay, guys, please let us know if this is objectionable or not. But we want to see proposals coming forward to how we can meet growth that we need to provide. We need to provide houses for the residents that support our industries in terms of where we go as an economic basis, which have also been underpinned by the work of Turley's and Experian in terms of the 3 months of growth in this area. But and this is important to look at. What options, what ideas have you got for where we want growth, or where would you like to see growth? We realise that we've got a shortfall of realistic brownfield sites, so we need to look beyond that in terms of where we can go further from this. So I'll leave it for there now, members. You can read the rest of the report, but I'd just like to say that part of that will be the equality impact assessment that you'll find in your appendix part of this report, which underpins how we intend to involve the local community in terms of making sure that it doesn't prejudice any particular person or groups in achieving that aim. We have to do that as a local authority. We have to make sure that we're putting that forward to the community, and this is an evidence-based tool in itself. So this also, goes to illustrate things like the reports based on the censuses, the determinants of ages, of where disability lies, and everything from gender reassignment through to race, sex, pregnancy and maternity. It's quite a broad spectrum of impacts, but it can all have an impact on the actual policy. So we need to make sure that does the local plan have a positive of negative aspects on any of those, and what evidence can be identified and brought to that. So I'll leave it there, Leader. I hope that's a bit an introduction for you.
That's great, Paul. Thank you. And it's really good to see this come forward now as we press ahead with our own plan since we split from the joint local plan. I think one of the two contentious items that seem to come out of this are the people trying to identify green belt or want to know what green belt is going to be built on. And of course, these are proposals for consultation about the policy, not about sites, as you said. It needs to be clear. And unfortunately, opposition councillors, even the opposition group leader, has been on his social media claiming that all green belt in Kidsgrove is going to be built on because of these proposals. That is not the case whatsoever. And also just needs to be pointed out, and for a later date for a political battle, is that any of the growth figures, whether it's the national set, the sustainable growth or the greater jobs growth, number of dwellings per annum is still a lot less than the figures that were coming out of the joint local plan when Labour ran the council. And of course, when we took over, we saw that for some reason, housing figures per annum were almost the same as what Stoke were having in their area. And you're thinking, well, they're a city going for this massive growth, which is what they've put in their local plan now. And we are a market town that's looking for sustainable growth. And yet we were requiring as many houses as Stoke almost in some respects. So I think that just shows the difference really between the two groups. We've split off. We're doing our own plan that will suit Newcastle's need. And as Paul has said, it will be based on what the requirements for jobs are and what sites we want to bring in for employment. That will then affect the sites we need for homes for people within the borough, so that people can live within the borough as well as working. And I think that's a positive way forward. And this consultation is a key part to take us through to get the public's views and those of stakeholders and developers to bring the next stage of the plan forward, which we'll be talking about sites, and there'll be a call for sites at that stage. At the moment, there is no call for sites. This is about policy, and it's as detailed as Paul has said. Open up to other comments now, Steve.
I think everything has been said that needs to be said. What I can add, of course, is to say it's a consultation. Please, people get involved with it. That's the whole point of it, is for people to put their views forward. It's not specific sites, it's wider than that. And please get involved. And let's make it happen. The sooner we get this in place, the sooner we can move on. This has been dragging on for year upon year upon year with the joint local plan. And we need to crack on it and get this done. And this is, it's a good stage in its development. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Nope. So recommendations before us, which Paul has moved, as set out, delegating to the Executive Director and also to the Cabinet Member to finalise the public consultation arrangements in association with the documents attached to this Cabinet agenda. And then Cabinet approves a period of no less than 6 weeks public consultation to conclude no later than Tuesday, 14th of December. And as Paul has outlined, a possible start for that in his opening remarks. And then to receive a report on the future meeting summarising the findings of the consultation. All agreed? Excellent. Moving back to our agenda, another one in the planning area, which is associated with the local plan, is the draft statement of community involvement 2021. Paul's introducing this one too.
Thank you, Leader, and I won't be so lengthy on this one, as you've probably caught sight of this before, and it won't be new to some members. When we had the joint local plan, we had a similar thing that came to the Cabinet that was agreed upon at the time, but we've had to devolve a new one because of the undertaking that we've done to go our own separate ways. Because of the uniqueness of Newcastle, this is particularly needed to be in place. Now, this basically sets out of how we're going to do the consultation processes to make sure that how we're going to get people involved at an early stage of the planning process. That means you have a chance to influence this, and you just heard from myself there about the consultation process that will be coming into play for the issues and options stages. How we're going to do that, this sets out how we're going to do that, how we're going to consult the local communities, how we're going to make sure that the neighbourhood development plans are included in terms of dovetailing into our local policies, but to make sure that we're managing expectations, that we don't overload the public with consultation fatigue, and take advantages of the technical innovations that have been taking place before and during COVID, where it is accepted now that have an electronic device of some sort to interact on the internet. It's hoped by the time we get to the site-specific part of the joint, sorry, I keep saying joint, of the Newcastle local plan in the latter half of next year, that we look at things like they've been successful in the recent consultations that we've jointly been involved with, to have such things as virtual rooms that people can actually get information from the website to where they want to go in terms of accessing information, to make sure that we do a series of road shows. And at the moment we're undertaking the exercise to determine which areas are going to be targeted for our road shows and access availability events for the community to engage with the planning services. In terms of the options and issues paper, for example, some libraries we used last time, some communities halls we used last time, but we want to make sure we do it within the realms of a COVID safe environment, of course, that we need to respect. Despite some people wanting things to go full steam ahead, we still have to be very mindful that we're living with COVID at the moment, and we need to make sure that that's part of the plan making process to protect officers and the public alike. The draft statement of community involvement will make sure that we're clear in terms of where the decision-making processes are taking place. For example, the actual local plan, when it becomes draft in terms of submission, will go to the full council. At the moment, it's going through at cabinet level, as we've seen today, in terms of the first stages of that. But it's very important to maintain that it underpins the planning policy to how we develop the local plan, and to make sure that it's robust enough when it comes to the time of inspection, because that's the critical thing. Can we evidence it? What evidence is out there to support our policies and decisions that we've made in terms of where we get the information out of the issues and options paper, but to make sure that we're involving the community whenever we can on where the direction and meaningful engagement needs to take place in the collaborations with individuals, neighbourhoods, local organisations, businesses, and developers in terms of the local plan. So the Borough Council acknowledges the importance of this proactively engaging with a wide section of the community so that our local plan reflects a collective and cohesive vision of a set of agreed priorities for sustainable area. So that's all that I have to say on this, but it's we need to be working with our neighbourhood authorities as well as the need to consult with them to make sure that they're happy with our plan and the way it's going, and to involve them at this stage is crucial also to the way we want to go, and forms that evidence base for where we can go from here. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Paul. So recommendation is as we adopt this document as Paul has set out. Do we all agree? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the car parking strategy update, and Stephen is going to introduce this.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. When this administration took over, one of the first things we did was a car parking strategy, and I think we felt that car parking wasn't going to be used as some sort of cash cow by this council, but it would be used in conjunction with the businesses to try to drive their footfall and things like that forward, rather than just use it as just a bank. So we did various numbers of different policies, promotions, things like that. We've also invested in 12 new ticket machines, which are much more up to date. If anybody can remember the old orange things that were out the arc just about, and they've gone. We've got a new contract to pay parking by phone, that's been done. New CCTV. The Midway is coming to the end of its life and is going to be replaced by a new car park. Shoppers discount after 1 p.m. of £1. This was going for 8 months and it's still going on now, a couple of years later. Various free parking events for Christmas, late night shopping, free parking, things like that. But the two really big things is that the Midway car park, we're going to do from the 1st of October. That says me desperately looking, I think it's 1st October, yes. 1st October, it'll be free from 9 till 1 and then £1 for the rest of the day. This will run till the 5th of January 2022. Now this is an incentive really to get people into the town to spend money in our shops. Alongside this, I've written to Robert Jenrick, who I know reasonably well because he stood in Newcastle for Parliament one time for us, asking that he could suspend the business rates we pay on our car parks, specifically the Midway car park. Now, each car park is like a business. It's like its own little world. And our business rates for our car parks are £214,000, and the business rates for the Midway car park is £96,000. So before we open the door, if we have one car, we've got £96,000 to pay. And this money's got to be paid by someone. So we've written to Robert Jenrick and asked if he could suspend that on the Midway for 4 months. I've yet to get a response, but we've done that. Now this is an updated review of a policy we put in place. This parking strategy, I think it needed looking at 2-3 years down the line, just tinker around with it, geared up a bit. And I say we don't use it as a way of revenue generation. We use it to improve the experience for people coming into the town. Thank you, Liam.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, completely agree with you on that, and really endorse the COVID recovery, free parking in the run up to Christmas and over into the new year for that period, as you've outlined in the Midway. I think we've done a lot on car parking, really, and the introduction of the £1 after 1, where you can park for £1, says what it says on the tin, any time from 1 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next morning. I think that is great. Also, of course, free on Sundays, as it always has been, which really coincides with our markets on Sunday as well. But we're doing our bit, and this is about encouraging people to come into town, not only to shop, but also to spend recreation time. There's the putting green, crazy golf, probably not called crazy golf, but the putting thing down below. There's the cinema, there's the eateries, there's the bars. Obviously, you shouldn't be driving if you go in the bars, of course, unless you just have a Coke. But all the other things in the town to attract people in, and we're providing that in the run up to Christmas, that free parking period, which I know the businesses will like, and I know the bid will help to promote for us. It's all about promotion of these things, and we need to continue using our social media and also our PR outlets to enable the message to get out there about this free parking in the run up to Christmas. And hopefully that will help the town and the businesses to continue to recover from COVID. As we said earlier, the market is vibrant, the town is vibrant most days, and this will add an extra incentive for people to come in as well. And really pleased to see the update on the strategy. We don't just do strategies in this council that sit on a dusty shelf. We actually update them and implement them and go even a stage further. So I think we can really welcome this and agree with the recommendations. Open it up to any comments. Not seeing anybody. So Stephen has moved those recommendations there for the update on the car park strategy, and then approve the schedule of fees or not fees in the case of the COVID recovery free parking in the midway in the run up to Christmas and into the new year, and that be implemented in consultation with the portfolio by our executive director from the 1st of October. All agreed? Excellent. Next item in what is a busy agenda is the J2 update. We asked for this to come to us for a couple of reasons. One, everybody's aware of, as we discussed earlier, there's been problems with the J2 recently with the pool problems, which coincided with the lockdown. So we were able to do that work while the mass majority of that work while the J2 was closed anyway. But that comes on the back of a lot of problems since it opened in 2012, which have been detailed in the report, which we've got before us today, which we requested. And I think it's such things as leaking roofs, such things as a sauna leaking into the changing rooms below were long-standing issues that were, when we came back into power in the end of 2017, in December, we raised immediately. We went, I remember going with our previous portfolio holder, Mark Holland, over for a site visit, and we were shocked by what we found. And why has this been allowed to continue like this? So during that period, through 2018, we tried to get action taken. We were told there was a lot of legal issues that we couldn't get over with the company that built J2 for the council. But really, since we got a new chief executive in position, he's managed to remove a lot of the obstacles to getting the company, Morgan Sindall, around the table and getting a good working relationship on them, because we're still during the period when they should put right any faults, as we have been for the past years since it's been was opened. And we have rectified, I believe now there is no more leaking from the roof. There's certainly no leaking down into the changing rooms, and the changing rooms have been replaced where they were damaged. The pool has been repaired and is open again. And we've also requested, while we're still in this period of the contractor on the hook, so to speak, for a full drains up and looking under in the cupboards in the boiler room, on the roof, in the reception, up the climbing wall, and everything to see if there are any more issues with this bad build, which wasn't picked up earlier. So I think the message from this is was our flagship sports centre and fitness centre. You know, £11 million or whatever years ago were invested in this, and it was disappointing that those problems, when they came to the fore in several years after it opened, no action was taken, which has led to considerable problems which we had on our plate when we came in at the end of 2017 and got our new chief executive to concentrate on when he came to join the council a few years ago now. And that led to the resolution as is detailed in the report. So it's really important now that we have that report from the survey. I'll just bring in Simon McKenney, our director that is coordinating this, just for an update on when that will take place and when we can hear back the results.
Thank you, Simon. The survey will be between the 16th and 18th of September, and we expect the results to be back within 2 weeks after that. So by the end of September, we should know.
Brilliant. So fingers crossed there are no more serious issues, but if there are, this survey will find them and we'll get them rectified. And I think, speaking for Jill, who's not here today, obviously what we need is a good functioning J2 so we can rebuild that membership up again. And, it is the flagship. Even with the problems, it's still a flagship facility for the borough, and it's even more so now we've solved some of those issues, and we will hunt out any more and work with the contractor to get those resolved going forward. Any comments, Steve?
Yeah, thank you, leader. And yes, what an interesting report. Building defects. I'm not a professional swimming pool builder, so I can't really comment on the details too much of it, really. Certain things, gym floors repaired, the hydraulic system, the training pools repaired, the pool leaks being repaired. But the two really is the roof leak. I think when we first went over there, when we first took over, and we saw buckets on the stairs collecting water from the roof. I mean, what a scandalous state of affairs that this was just allowed to go on and on and on. You know, you get your house gets got a new roof on your house. You don't expect to put buckets out for the next 10 years, do you? But previous administration just seemed to just let it go on and drift and dither and vacillate, and I don't know, it's very strange. Very, very disappointing. The other one was the aqua sauna, which I think they even had to shut part of the changing room below it because water was just running down the walls from it because the tanking wasn't done. Now, okay, the builders did it wrong. We presume they did it wrong. That's one argument. But my argument is, why didn't the council do something about it? Why did it just be allowed to say, oh, there's water down the wall. That's what happens in Newcastle. In Jubilee 2, it just leaks. Let's get on with it. Don't worry about it. It just happens. And nothing got done. And it took us to take over. And like the leader says, the chief exec was tasked with speaking to Morgan Sindall and getting these things sorted, which he has done. And I think the relationship with Morgan Sindall now is pretty reasonable. But why it wasn't done years ago when you first started leaking, I haven't got a clue. And also there's a bit on there, 2.11, that there was the release of the retention payment in February 2016 when there were known ongoing issues with the building. Why was that done? You know, you get a house extension on your house, you have a snagging done. You don't give them the final money till it's everything sorted. But apparently we did. So that's the points that jump out at me. I mean, the various sort of structural defects that have been fixed when they occurred, like this swinging floor and that. Fair enough, but it's these things just left and ignored, and the hope is that all sun is going to shine, so the roof's not going to leak again. It's just bizarre. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Any other comments, cabinet members? Trevor.
Just a quick one, leader. I just hope that we've learned a lot of lessons from it for the future, for any other projects that we undertake. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. So recommendations before us there, the cabinet. We do note that report and note also that the extra work which Simon McKenney has told us is going to happen. Is going to take place, and we wait the results of that and deal with any more long-standing issues that have been under the carpet or behind the wall or whatever to get them sorted out. And we recognise that since 2012 there have been a number of long-standing and significant building defects that have had adverse effects on the reputation of J2. It's therefore noted that since 2017 and the incoming of the new administration, significant progress has been made to resolve some of the long-standing issues in J2. Officers of the Borough Council, along with Morgan Sindall, are to complete an intrusive building survey to identify any further unknown building defects that may cause a failure of the fabric of the building. And council officers, alongside Morgan Sindall, having completed the survey, will obviously agree appropriate corrective actions where where building defects are identified. All agreed? Thank you for that. Next item is the procurement of the customer e-payment service. This is giving a delegated authority to our finance officer in consultation with the portfolio holder to enter into a partnership for a customer e-payment system. This is part of a partnership arrangement we're having with other councils, and is to bring our systems up to date so that they comply with the relevant financial regulations. And I do notice where it says in about typical, probably an IT phase, a considerable offboarding and onboarding work. It's like, what's that? So if you look, luckily in brackets, it says obviously the project planning, data mitigation systems, none the wiser are we really, but interface configuration, customer reporting, writing, testing, training, and communications, etc., to overhaul the system. And that new partnership we're talking about with fellow councils such as Cannock Chase and Stafford Borough Council and some others as well, will bring us a system which is up to date and also standing us in good stead on the particularly important part of the council's operations, an e-payment system. Without that, people can't make their online transactions, etc. And obviously, income for the council wouldn't come if that was to fail in any way. Recommendation before us is, as I've said, we delegate authority to the finance officer in consultation with portfolio to enter into a new partnership for our customer e-part payment system. All agreed? Any comments first? No, all agreed? Excellent, thank you. And then item 11 is the Finance and Performance Review Report, first quarter, April to June 21, get the right year. And first part of that is the financial report, and Steve's going to do that, and then we'll move on to performance after.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. No massive amounts to add, really. We've got unring-fenced government funding of £842,000, which makes a bit of a difference to the general fund revenue budget. That's in balance, and the capital's about £6,000 to the good on the capital, so they're both absolutely fine. We have nothing to add to it. They're both where they should be.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. Moving to any questions, Steve, about the financial report? No. Moving then to the performance side of it, you will see that there are two indicators off target, but they're not showing up as red, but the rest are on target or at least going in the right direction. So as we do, we go through this as per portfolio, and I welcome comments from the portfolio holders on the performance as stated in the report. First one is local services that work for local people, priority number 1. And the first tranche of them are environmental health, recycling and operations, which come under Trevor Johnson. Any comments, Trevor? Light on.
Thank you, Leader. I say, as we're coming through the pandemic, we're coming back to normal. You know, the figures are not what we want to see just at the moment, but they will quickly come back in line. Okay, next section are on customers and IT. Again, staying in the green on key ones such as percentage of requests resolved at first point of contact and the number of calls not answered. Again, we do go through peaks and troughs, particularly when council tax is being renewed, and etc. And when there's elections, which of course is right at the start of the quarter we're looking at. We had both of those. So and important that we stay on green there, so that the phones are answered and inquiries are dealt with. Digital delivery, total number of digital online transactions. As you can see there, a high figure of those, which shows that the carrying on from the pandemic when this building was closed and people moved online, that they are still, accessing services from the council online, which is really encouraging. Again, use of the website there that can show the figures there, and we will be unveiling our new website as part of the One Council later in the year in October. Over the page, you've got some revs and benefits ones there for Steve to talk about.
Apart from that, they're all on target. I've got nothing to add. They're all absolutely fine.
Okay, that's easy for you then, Steve. Looking at the sickness management, again, a green there, showing that we are on target there for that. Again, given the issues we've had with COVID, etc., and the consequences of that, we're doing particularly well on those. Again, staff turnover is seen as very low in this quarter as the next one, and staff vacancies, as you can see there, are low. Moving on to our second priority, which is growing our peoples and places. We've got property. Any comments, Steve? You've got a green there. Green light to go. And then the next one is the planning and development, a slab of indicators there for Paul to comment on.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Yeah, I'll keep it short. I think the figures are self-explanatory. We've done particularly well during COVID and meeting all our expectations in terms of quality of major developments and the speed of development applications. both non-major and major. Members will perhaps will look at the target figure for 21-22 and notice that the target figure is slightly down in terms of our objective, but we've put that in place to give the latitude to the planning policy team and the rest of the planning team to meet our obligations to make sure that the local plan is on track. But it's important to remember that even with that in hand, these indicators remain well within target and are exceeding the expectations of before we took over administration of the council. So I'm particularly happy with this section, and all credit to Sean again. He isn't here now to embarrass him with, to Sean and his team for an excellent work all round. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Like to echo on what you say there. And I think that sort of trade-off between getting that local plan done and still maintaining our good performance on planning is key. And you're managing to balance those well now, which is a real credit to the team and also to you as portfolio holder for concentrating on those two big things for us, is, you know, keeping planning applications coming through the system, you know, allowing householders to develop their properties, and also for developers to develop housing estates for people to live in, and also job opportunities and all of the things that come from that. And then also that local plan, that 20-odd year look into the future for the future of Newcastle's planning is going ahead as well. Over the page onto on our third priority, healthy and active and safe borough. There's a couple there on community safety. Jill, any comments?
Okay, looking at the cases coming through, I think we manage them quite well. We're working very well with partner agencies, and we're also looking on track to get the town centre, I don't know what we're going to call them, but certainly the town centre marshals in place that should help with the antisocial behaviour.
Thank you. There's a couple in Jill Waring's there, of course. One, the museum, which of course has been closed for the renovations, and before that was closed because of COVID. They're pushing a digital offer, which was quite right. I think when we do open, we will be sending up the time capsule that was recently retrieved from the old council offices, which has been demolished across in Merrill Street, which we opened at the end of last week. A little treasure trove of newspapers, and when you see the headlines in the Sentinel from 1965, you see things haven't quite changed. It was about refugees, economic issues, not about tax rises, I must say, but about all sorts of things that are still relevant today. So things never really change, do they? And also some plans, what the Rycroft area was going to be under the plans the council had at that time, which weren't delivered in full. But of course, we now know through the Future High Street Funds, we have got a great chance of delivering our proposals in full for that site with the £11 million that's come through. But that will go up to the museum and will be on display for the public. And there's also a few other things we've retrieved from the old council offices, which will be available up at the museum when that reopens. The crest that was in the council chamber, etc., saved for future generations. Going just on J2, we talked about it earlier. The membership is now recovering from the pandemic, and I think the figures are now well over 2,000 members we're up to now, and increasing all the time. Good work for Jill and the team on that. Last priority is the town centre for all. And Steve, car parking, we've talked about that already, haven't we? But footfall, again, footfall is increasing, as you see, quite dramatically, because we came out of the hopefully final lockdown, and we'll begin to, as the town centre returns to normal, hopefully without lockdowns, be able to gauge the increase in footfall that free parking and also the activities of the bid and the extra markets, etc., is generating, hopefully leading to extra trade for the businesses. But on the markets there, Steve, anything further to add on the markets from what we said earlier?
No, the percentages are there, and I think they're very encouraging. I'm not saying we've reached our final destination, if you like, but we're well on the way. And look at what it was like on Q4 in the middle of lockdown to what it's like now. So we've got a long way to go, but we're on the right path, I think.
Great, thank you for that. So that concludes our sweep through of the performance data, and the recommendations as we do that. And we note obviously the finance and performance. All agreed? And then moving to item 12, which is the forward plan, that is produced on page 161. We'll go through it page by page. This sets out the agendas for the cabinet going forward. We've got a number of Septembers there, which on page 163, which we delivered today. Then over the page talks about our October cabinet, and then the November, and there's an item on there for December. I expect more items to come forward over the next couple of months, but there is a busy schedule there as we get into the budget setting process, the MTFS, and we've heard, I believe, that the spending review is going to take place in October time, but and then we're having the budget autumn statement about that time. But I feel again we'll wait till probably a few days before Christmas before we'll hear the final settlement, which is always the case. But we're planning ahead already. The efficiency board is back up and will be back up and running in the next week to begin to look at the savings we need to make going forward to balance the budget. But there is a series of reports that will come through. Scrutiny will be involved in all of the process on the budget as we move towards the budget setting next February. But that's the forward plan as printed. All agreed? Agreed. Excellent. Item 13 is urgent business. I haven't received any of the business. Item 14 is a disclosure exempt information. We don't have any confidential reports, so no need to do that. And the next item is I haven't received any calls for members of the council to speak or members of the public to speak. So that concludes the meeting today. A long meeting, but a lot of business. And thank you for attending, and have a good afternoon.